Okay, so the invitation here in the Scout, this entire series, the Natural Law series, this is where I would put like right at the cusp of Scout and Pioneer. When Kylie was speaking last week, she said, Scout and Pioneer are really in that gaseous, air is the element where it's still mental, spiritual, it's not very tangible yet. So there's a lot of freedom, there's a lot of flow to that. So, so you could easily spend 20 hours of service just watching this series. You could easily spend 20 hours of service exploring kairotic flow, exploring Kylie's material about that, how to speak this language. So all of that right there, that's enough. That is enough to be able to generate the seven-figure return in 2 years. What's also important is being able to share, though, is to share the conversation. So some of you might really like the idea of just listening and being a service. Some of you might want to be more active. You might want to be more like a pioneer and be more active and go out into the wilderness and do something new, do something different. So that's the third invitation as well too. That if you want to start building your 20 hours of service, you can watch this series as many times as you want. If you're logging it, then if you're logging the time banking hours, then it all counts. So then we go into Pioneer, and the Pioneer is really where I find the living library has the most value because we ask the question who. When Kylie was speaking, the who is kind of like a personification of the what. The what do we do? For me, the way this is alive in establishing a living library is that I ask the questions, well, who is attracted to this? Who is willing to have the conversation? Who is willing to suspend judgments? Who is willing who is willing to be in a situation that might be a little uncomfortable at first. So these are some of the questions that I'm asking myself as I'm attracting people into my living library that I've been cataloging here for the last year and a half now. But yeah, I think I want to ask that question to both of you at the moment, Charles and Hemanth. Who who do you feel a flow with? Who where's who represents kind of like an ease and a flow when it comes to communication, when it comes to relationship. So we'll start there. And that's kind of where the living library is going, is focusing on the who.
I would say for me, some of my family,
Mhm.
I feel like definitely when I talk with you, Mike, I feel that flow of conversation. Um, I would say a couple of people, depending on what the conversation is. I would say a couple of people in my outside social kind of gathering circles. Um, yeah, I would say not. I'm learning not. So some people are willing to do more more than other people, and I think that becomes part of the conversation, and that becomes part of um, who's able to do what, and um, that's part of the listening and the learning.
Yeah, and that's kind of where the law of magnetism really, I think, really it reveals itself. Is who is willing to be with you in this, who is willing to be in this space, who is willing. Yeah, that's the word that's coming up for me a lot. Just responding to you, Charles. Who is willing to to entertain these questions?
Yeah, and I think sometimes people start out willing, or I start out willing, and then once you get into the conversation or the situation, then you're like, oh, maybe I'm not so willing after all. I didn't realize it was going here.
Mhm.
Um, So then you kind of back up and you're like, yeah, no, never mind. Um, and you would hope that you could have that kind of conversation and still maintain the integrity of the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a
Because
life.
then maybe you then ask the question like, okay, what happened? Because we started out willing, but now we're not so willing. Or now the people that felt willing are like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. And I
Mm,
would like for people to try and stay around, even though sometimes the conversation is really difficult,
yeah,
that I even want to exit from. Um, but it be good. I think it makes for a good understanding of, okay, where does that take us to next? And can we go to the next level without everything falling apart?
yeah. You're starting to go into the cultivator and the how, and I'm going to address that in a moment. But yeah, yeah. What comes up for me is, who is willing to be in the discomfort? Who is willing to, who is at least willing to entertain being uncomfortable for a little bit to discover something new. So yeah, yeah,
And not on your own. That's one of the things for me that's become very important, because I found that sometimes I get into a situation and I'm like, okay, I'm willing to do this, but I just don't want to do it with any of you.
right, right, yeah,
And that kind of defeats the whole purpose if you're planning to go forward with those people.
yeah.
It's not something you can do solo. I don't think. I don't know. I haven't found that to be the case. I can do it solo and kind of answer my own questions,
Mhm,
but that's kind of the easier part.
mhm,
The
yeah,
harder part is having the questions and the conversation when you're in the group
yeah, yeah,
or with
and how,
another person. Yeah.
yeah, and how to create the environment where everybody is honored and able to express their truth as well too, because that sometimes happens in dynamics where sometimes there's people who like to dominate and there's some people who like to be in control. So
Yes.
yeah, so who is willing to, what comes up for me is who is willing to relinquish control to be in this relationship, to be in this, whatever it is that we're co-creating together.
Yeah.
Go to you, Hemant. Who are you resonating with, or who is coming into your world where there's a flow and an ease and a mutual, kind of like a mutual interest.
This is a bit tricky for me because if I say it's going to be a lie,
Hmm.
because we are always attracting the persons we are meant to be with.
Yeah.
That's what I think. It's more sort of we listening and tuning to the flow rather than we finding the flow in the first place
Hmm.
because we are always in the flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then this is a question I can point to some person, but in truth, I'm attracting many people that are aligned that I want to travel with them. But what happens is I'm not willing to take the step. I'm not willing to be uncomfortable.
Mm, mm.
I can just keep on blaming that I'm not attracting the persons I'm meant to be, but it's a lie, right? We are always attracting the persons we meant to be. And in my life, there are many opportunities that came to me, but I'm not willing to accept it. I just keep on in the mentality that I need to attract more, but I'm always attracting. That's the thing I forgot. While on the pursuit of attracting, I forgot that I'm always attracting.
Yeah, it's very true. It's very true. And we're attracting who we are being. And yeah, yeah, that's a very good point too. Is kind of like being aware of the flow that we are always attracting, and whoever is in front of us or whoever is coming into our energy, is there because of what we're putting out. to take responsibility for that, like you said, that's that's the challenging part. So when I go into the cultivator and the how question, I hope I can bring a little clarity about that, about how to make it easier. That's a how question, how to make it easier. But before I go into that, I'm just going to invite the listener to the resources, which is the Living Library. And there's been a lot of confusion about that, about what a living library is. A lot of people think because I've been recording a lot of my living library conversations that they need to be recorded. No, they don't. They don't. A living library conversation is just a conversation where you're learning about the other person. And you may designate beforehand, whether or not one person is going to be the book, which is the speaker, and the other person is going to be the listener or the reader, the one who's asking the questions. There's really no rules. And my invitation is that, whoever comes up for you when you're asking these who questions, they're a potential living library partner. So, you might say, hey, there's this new initiative emerging. There's this new way of doing things. And would you be interested in exploring that with me? So what I'll do is I'll invite the listener as well to look at the Living Library conversations that I've had. And again, you don't have to record them. And if you're logging your time that you're spending in Living Library conversations, then you get to share in the financial returns with that as well. So what I'll do is I'll share my Living Library conversations in a link here on my page, and also share the Human Library organization that originated out of Denmark, where it's encouraged to talk to someone that you might not have had any kind of any mutual interest in or any mutual experiences with, but to just for the sole purpose of learning, and being able to do that benefits both of you. So there's many ways you can have a living library conversation. If you both need financial return or you both need financial resources, then you can both have that conversation together and both receive that as an hour served or time served from the Karmic Margin Call project. Or you might say, well, you know what, I have enough hours, logged, and you're still logging hours of service. Why don't I give you my service hour, for being the human book, and I'll be the reader, and then I'll pay you an hour, for you to be the book. Or you can do it the reverse. I'll pay you an hour to listen to my story. So there's many ways you can do that, and I'll share those resources on the page here. So now, as we go to from Pioneer into the Cultivator, the question then becomes how. How do we do this? How do we make it easier? How do we step into the discomfort? How do we make it more joyful? How do we make it more fun? How do we make it more honest? See, here's where our values are coming into play here. But the resource that I'll offer here in Cultivator is how to move through different conversations. So the Living Library, where I'm putting that in the Pioneer phase, is really just about having an appreciation conversation. And then when you move into possibility, that's when you start to ask, how are we going to do this? How are we going to generate 7 figures in 2 years or less? How can we make that process even faster? How do we even begin to understand this? So what has been helpful, and I'll share resources with this as well too, is to understand where you're at in the relationship. First, there's the appreciation conversation, which is what a living library conversation is. Then is the possibility conversation, where you ask, well, whatever it is that you want to do, whatever your intention is, what does it make possible? And then you also ask the question, what is it going to take? So you start to create possibilities. So without asking anyone to make a commitment or to sign a contract or anything like that, you're still in a low stakes conversation. From possibility conversation comes the invitation conversation, where you're starting to get a little bit explicit about, what you're inviting someone to explore with you. You're making it explicit about how you're going to treat each other. And then you go into the fourth conversation, which is the dissent conversation. And that's where, if the values are not aligned, that's when things kind of, if there's conflict, you might grow apart, or you might branch off and do different things, and that's fine. The dissent conversation really kind of reveals how much trust there is there. And the trust is established by spending as much time as possible in the appreciation conversations. And that's why we're creating a living library, so you can invest more time and share in the financial resources for building those relationships. So, and then after dissent comes responsibility, where everybody understands their role and they're all playing their role, and there's more of a flow to it. And then there's the commitment, where you take the action. And by the time you get to the commitment conversation, you've probably already done what you said you were going to do anyway, and now you're just taking inventory of that. So the resource that I'm going to share at this point is the exploring integrity conversations, where we role modeled the appreciation, the possibility, the invitation. And when we got to dissent, a couple of people stepped back. So for me, the how question is, how do we help? How do we help each other understand that there's a lot out there? How do we help each other understand how to access these resources? How do we help each other understand that it doesn't have to be as difficult? So those are some of the how questions. I'd like to ask both of you, what are some of the how questions that you would like to explore?
I guess my first how would be, yeah, how do we go about having a better understanding of putting this all together?
Mhm.
And how do I have a better understanding of what's being offered?
Mhm.
And then how do I know, how do I kind of figure out what to do from there? What do I do with it?
Mhm. Yeah. 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 And that's the cultivator. That's where the expansion starts to happen. Where most people, I'm going to be honest, most people are in that cultivator and regulator space, where it's about how and when. So now this is where we're taking an idea and making it more tangible, making it more substantial. So those are all great questions, and it's a living library conversation that you and I can have, Charles.
Okay.
How about you, Hemant? What are some of your how questions? How do you make things fun? That's one of the things I would like to ask you in a living library conversation. How do you make things more fun?
Yeah, that's going to be fun, right? The conversation itself going to be fun.
Yeah, yeah. I like to do improv. I like to do creative improv, and then have a discussion about the scene, or the scenario we just played for deeper discovery. That's how I like to make things fun. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Fun is important. I sometimes, yeah, what's alive for me, and I'm glad that you brought that tonight, Hemant, is that it should be fun. There should be an element of lightness and fun. And I realize that I like to have fun with things that a lot of people find intense and scary. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I'm starting to understand a little bit about how that why energy, where I'm really trying to find out why that really it creates a polarization, or a polarization effect with the cultivator, who is still trying to focus on how. but yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I enjoy doing that I think is scary for some people is I do like to find the magic in the tragic or what can be fun about mental health issues or what can be fun about some very deep, deep spiritual or esoteric challenges. So yeah, but yeah. Anyway, I'm exploring here. How do we make it more fun? How do you have fun, Amir?
Yeah, actually, it reminds me of the conversation of Jordan Peterson. Where it's more of a public talk, I think. Where he said, "I cannot sit in the classroom of my child for a while. I think I might do something wrong because they keep on rambling the same thing that makes me do something wrong."
Mm, mm, yeah,
Because the place is not the fun in the first place, right? No matter how fun a person can be, if the place is forced to be a competitive place in terms, there are many rules rather than values, right? The place which focus on rules other than values. At the
mhm,
same times, values, as you said, how honesty looks like in practice. That is the point, right? We might be saying we can practice values. Let's do it. As soon as we say it, let's do it. We will be thinking, hey, what we need to do, right? That's the question comes to the our mind again, right? Because no one teaches what honesty looks like in practice in any setting, but they just tell us to do be honest, right? That's like giving a kid some task to do and saying do it, right? But we are not explaining what is in the first place, what is it in the first place. So that's what, whenever I used to be a chess coach, right,
mhm,
I just have fun with the kids, but later I came to the conclusion I'm not really helping the kids, right? Because I'm having fun for sure, but on the process of fun, I'm just exploiting my health, and at the same time, I'm not really contributing to the kids in a tangible way, right? I cannot see a result. They are improving in aspects of chess, but in aspects of life, I don't see a clear path, right? That's why I discontinued my chess career, and while seeking fun, for sure we need to learn from kids. That's what I will say, right?
mhm,
Because they are the best teachers of fun for anyone.
mm.
If we
Well,
spend some time with them, we will automatically be become a being who's known for fun.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for that too, because I think play. I think that's a good value to have as well too. Will this help? Whatever it is that we're doing, will this help me engage in more play? And you're absolutely right about spending time with kids. I often struggle with letting go of my professional obligations and just playing with my kids and having exploring. I think that's another big thing is exploring things with my kids and learning things through their interests as well too. So there's another how question too is how do we play more? How do we engage, play with kids more with this? So these are great how cultivator questions. Yeah.
And what's funniest thing about is I remember my niece, right? My aunt daughter. Um, at the moment, I've been reading Atomic Habits book. At the time, I told her, okay, you should not use the same room for phone at the same time for sleep, right? Because what happens is the topic goes under one space, one purpose, right? What you do in one space tend to become a habit of that place, right? It start to become more sort of yeah, one habit will be assigned to one space. So if you spend more time on phone with one space, what happens is you cannot get to sleep at this place. Whenever you go to the place, eventually what thought might pop up in your head is, I need to use the phone, not sleep, right? This is the thing I explained in my mother tongue to my uh, niece. What happened is she got it at first glance. This is the fun thing. What we might be wondering is they will not understand our topics. No, it's not. We are not capable of explaining to them in a simple words. That's what I been taught in the whole chess career, right? Whenever I speak to kids, that's fair when we are challenging ourselves to put in an uncomfortable position to explain things in a manner they can understand. That's where truly our understanding enhances.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And what comes up for me is how to make, well, even language accessible, how to even make, communication accessible, to that age as well too, where they can act, they can do, and not get stuck in their head so much. So yeah, yeah, that's what's alive for me, because I've been teaching my son chess, and yeah, yeah, it's just more about just the enjoyment. It's like where's the joy in playing this game? Where's the joy in just doing this? And yeah. All right. Well, we are almost at our time here, so I'm going to go down to regulator, which is the question when. So just as the invitation for the how or the cultivator is to participate in groups where we explore those 6 conversations. The invitation for the regulator now is to explore how to manage a time bank, how to manage the EPE numbers, or the equal partnership economy numbers, that I had introduced a couple of conversations ago as well. So this is about regulation, management, making something solid. So that's where the invitation there is to explore how to log time in the time bank, and how to log contributions to the treasury, and how to distribute it equally to everyone who participates in this initiative, in this system. So for me, the questions that come up is when, especially people who do have liquid capital or finances to invest in something like this, when will they take a look at it? Or when will the individual understand the entire process? When will things speed up as far as people understanding this, and financial return be accessible to everybody? So these are some of the when questions. These are more of the tangible, realistic, how do we put this on its feet questions. And that's where most people function. They either function in the cultivator about the how are we going to do this, and then the regulator is the when. And because there's so much structure involved with regulation, there is a need for control. There is a need for structure. In my opinion, I think the reason why sometimes I have a friction with people is because this culture puts us so much in this regulation type of position, where you got to do things a certain way, and it's always been done a certain way, and that's what kind of provides structure. Now, I function very, very comfortably in Curator, where I'm asking, why does it have to be this way? And I also function very comfortably in Scout, where I'm saying, well, what can we do about it? What can we do to make it better? And that kind of butts up against the traditionalists. So yeah, so we'll get into some when questions here in a moment, but the invitation to the listener as well too is to look at all of this material, look at the time bank, look at how the EPE numbers function, because even in the EPE numbers, we're handing off information back to the steward. So even in the EPE numbers, which tracks, the day that things start to speed up, that tracks the location or the communities where things are starting to speed up. We're handing that information from regulator to scout. So yeah, so let's explore some when questions. I gave some examples of that, but I guess a personal when question for me is when when am I going to when am I going to give the right information to help this speed up? That's one of the when questions for me. But yeah, what are some of the when questions for both of you?
I guess
Which is
one of them for me would be like when do we move into that next phase of understanding more about the flow of um the giving and taking with the um not necessarily finances, but some kind of an exchange.
Mhm. Thank you, Char. Month. Is there any when questions that are coming up for you? You've been I think because you've been a part of almost all of these conversations, and you've put in your 20 hours already, I think. What comes up for you as to when, or the expectations of when?
When I'm going to convey my feelings in a way that create change, right?
Mhm. Mm,
Because in one of the call with a person, what I done is I clearly said this is going to destroy you. So please destroy the community before it destroys you. But
mm,
what happened is that person understand it, but is not ready to commit to the process. But what happened is afterwards he see the truth that he is stuck in some chaotic environment. He needs some order in his life. But at the moment he came to realize that that person came to realize the thing, uh, he started to even more get chaotic in the life in his life. This is the thing happen whenever I say something, I know for sure it will help others. But what happens is when I'm not conveying the feeling in a way that aligned to them, what happens is they tend to act on the opposite way, but it somehow even bring more chaos to their life. This is the thing I'm need to do it, right? And I'm working on it as we speak, right? Whenever I got to speak with this living library conversation, I always have many random thoughts popping in my head.
mhm,
I have a hard time controlling it. I just let it go and try to listen again and again, right? As Charles said, it's way difficult skill to learning to listen. We are never taught the skill in the first place. We always thought what we have in our mind should be written in the paper, or should be told to the outside world. We should never take a pause to listen. This
mm,
is the hard skill I'm trying to learn, and
mm,
I'm hopefully learning in a way that it's not hurting others, right?
mm. Yeah, yeah. What I'm hearing too is like, because you're making these observations about things that are potentially harmful, or can destroy. That what I associate that with is kind of like a scouting type of ability. When most people are being forced into regulation and cultivation, that can be very scary. That could be very scary to consider things that are potentially destructive, or potentially takes apart their their feeling of safety. So yeah, and as you're saying, about the developing the listening skills, as you're moving from scout into pioneering, maybe the next step or maybe the next right thing is for you to be in the living library conversations as the reader, as the listener, as the one asking questions and exploring. So that would be one potential pathway, because it's very it's one thing that's very difficult for society or for our culture is that it's very difficult for this for to get out of regulation and into stewarding and into curating, because it really means, where do we have to focus on, and even though it's uncomfortable, and then why is this happening, and then finally what do we do about it in response to the why. Our Western culture here in the United States especially, we jump right from regulation. We don't do a lot of stewarding, and if we do, there's a lot of political unrest over it. So we don't even acknowledge the scouts. We don't even acknowledge the curators and the scouts. We just throw it right back to the pioneer and say, hey, you know, create a business out of this and fix it. um, but um, but yeah, to honor the entire cycle is really about being able to listen and to go off script and to be where, be with what really needs attention. So I'm what I'm hearing is that the natural flow, and you kind of put this, you kind of observe this yourself, and then is the listening skills, the listening and responding skills, which I think which I think a living library is, it's one of the reasons why we want to have a living library, is to practice those skills. So yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here, and we'll go into a checkout, our final checkout of this series. But just to recap, I'm going to just put out the 6 invitations one more time to the listener, and to both of you as well. We can continue these conversations offline. But rather than start with Steward, I'm going to start with Pioneer. So the Pioneer is the living library. So I'm inviting anybody who's watching this that if this series resonated with you, or if this conversation resonated with you, you might want to consider spending some hours in our living library, where you can be the listener, which is also known as the reader, or you can be the speaker, which is also known as the book. So you can accumulate hours just by doing that. So then we go into Cultivator. So the invitation there, you can take a look at something that we call an inquiry cluster, where we have a small group of people from like 3 to 6 at the most, where we have conversations, appreciation conversation, possibility conversations, and you can participate in how to move from conversation to conversation. The next invitation is at the regulator is participating in the time bank. I'll put the application for the time bank there, and you can start to log your time, watching this or any kind of time banking exchange you might have with another member. So you can learn kind of like the technical end of it. You can learn, how to accumulate that data that really does drive the universal basic income. The fourth is the Steward is about having the higher stakes conversations about values. So I'll put a link to our mental health conversations with that. The Curator, again, we'll put conversations about matrixing there. So there will be a conversation linked up where we talk about how complicated or how complex sometimes high stakes conversations can be. When you're talking about the educational component and the financial component, the legal component, all of this. So that's invitation. And then the final invitation is this whole series. This whole series is really the result of a matrix that we've done in 4 different groups before, where the conversation was, well, how do we make this affect the financial system? How do we make this information, make a difference in our financial destinies? So just by having this conversation, just by listening to this conversation, and if you want, you can listen to it over and over again. You can still log those hours as services provided. So that's the last invitation, is just, taking in this entire series, and then, what you learn here, and what you carry with you, you can bring into the living library conversation. So the cycle goes all around again. So so thank you for joining us tonight. Let's do just a quick checkout. What did you appreciate most about our time together? What I appreciate most, Charles and Hemant, is that there was only three of us here, but we had a rich conversation. I wanna stress that this is all it takes. The enlightenment is appreciation of the small. We don't have to have a million people watching this. We don't have to have a group of 20 people in here. What we did here, just the three of us, is just so powerful, and I hope you feel that you've contributed in such a big way, to this movement of economic equality, of social equality. So I just want to thank and appreciate both of you for being a part of this conversation and helping us all move forward and helping us all evolve. And that's what I appreciate most. So, Charles or Hemant, what did you appreciate most about tonight?
I appreciate everybody showing up, and I appreciate learning, listening, and sharing some of my input and having the opportunity to do that. And I appreciate the curiosity around inviting others to be a part of it.
And Hemant, what did you appreciate most about tonight?
Yeah, I appreciate for your presence and Charles' presence here. Right, it's been one of the life-changing conversation I ever had with people. Right, no one will be open to this kind of conversation. At the first time I been in the series, I've been thinking I've been under a wrong motive to join, just explore what it is, right? Then I started, okay, this is the place I can learn my English skills, upgrade my English skills. Then later I came to the conclusion, oh, it's beyond that, right? What you are doing is beyond that. Okay, I just need to be present in the call. That itself will provide me clues for my life, right?
Mm,
That's how it's going as of now. But I'm so grateful for myself for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, we're so grateful as well too, Hemant. I'm thinking about the journey you've taken with us from the first call to here, and within these last couple of calls, you've been a major contributor of these conversations, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's been a real pleasure and a joy, kind of watching your journey through these conversations, and I'm looking forward to viewing these again, and continuing to connect with you as well.
Yeah, likewise, Mike.
All right, well, thank you, and as Hemant said, life changing. So thank you all.